Welcome. Thank you for joining me this morning. Let's start by having you introduce yourself.
Sure. So I own and operate Squeeze with two business partners, Brian and Eric, and that's what I do now. And what Squeeze is a really it's a business development agency, and the buttons we push and levers we pull happen to be marketing and advertising ones. And so that we approach our client businesses with that perspective, so everything's very very customized, which is a fun environment to work in.
Gotcha. So let's shift to the business environment. How do you see today's business environment?
That's a broad question, obviously.
You like?
And it's something that I think frustrates business owners, especially entrepreneurs taking their first couple of cracks at things, is this idea of build it and they will come. And I characterize that idea a lot of the time as just a lie. It's just not true. And the reason I say that is because build it and they will come it's only true in one environment, and that's a low distraction, low competition environment, right? And so to really answer your question, I would characterize the current business environment as a moment in time where you have the most competition and the most number of distractions for the consumer. And so in that environment, it is a competition for attention more than anything else. That's where the competitive environment is on attention.
So, how do you guys address that for your clients?
So there's a couple of things. I have the conversation with clients and entrepreneurs, business owners, marketing professionals in general about content creation. This content creation is a thing that presents as a difficult to scale mountain for so many businesses, because it's the question I answer that is asked of me most of the time is, how do we even approach this, right? So content is what people consume on these social media platforms, on YouTube. It's mostly video content. The level of production these days is astronomical, right? I showed you right as we were getting started my personal experiments with content. At some point, I get the question enough, and it's poignant enough for these business owners to be creating content. I went out and did my own experiment to see if I could create content that actually got attention. And I was moderately successful at that. But what we find is that you need to be informative or educational, which are slightly different, right? Educational, I kind of classify that as pertinent to things you work on in your professional or personal life. Informative is just interesting, right?
Is that the
Or
same as
funny.
entertaining?
Informative and educational and funny are all entertaining. They're just categories of entertaining in my mind. And so I kind of break it down though, in that you need to be one of the three to be valid. If you're two of the three, you'll get outsized attention. And so, but those are challenging things to be. Man, it is hard to be funny on purpose.
Sure.
It's even harder for a business entity to pull off funny on purpose to a general audience. Like, that's a mountaintop. I almost see that as inaccessible for the vast majority of businesses. And then it's a matter of
Are clients
framing.
receptive to that?
It's a mixed bag, but I'll tell you, it's a very clear indicator to us on whether that's a client that could be a good fit for our systems or not. Right. And I struggle to work with businesses that have no willingness to publish content of their own accord at all. Right. Because I'm not sure that they have the same potential for success as businesses that are. And like, yes, there are levers we could pull, there are advertising campaigns we could run. And we have that conversation very transparently of, they have limited upside compared to the scenario where you publish this kind of content more regularly.
Gotcha.
And we work through the conversation.
Yeah.
But content
Well,
publishing is where it starts.
how about sharing a recent situation? We'll call it a win. New client comes to you, you go through that process that you just shared, and whiz bang, this guy, should have his own TV show. He's so darn good.
This is one of those rare situations, I think, where I have an example immediately to answer that question. And I love this example too, because this person actually, like, some of the content was filmed at my house, which is very unique and non-standard, right?
And low
But
cost.
yeah, but it's just a local HVAC contractor, right?
Okay.
And I am fascinated by seemingly boring businesses that approach content and do it well, right? Because any boring business is typically going to be technical or involve themselves in some things or have some processes that just aren't obvious or seem strange to the casual observer, right? That creates interest. Interest generates attention, you know? And so you can just document seemingly boring processes that create your professional outcomes and it will generate interest. But this HVAC company locally, they're like, we just have HVAC techs. Like, I don't know what video we're supposed to make, but people say we should be on social media. Like, it's that kind of approach where they're like, I don't know, man. And, we talked them through this and we have a content creation team and we're like, we will work with you to ideate things, make sure that this isn't completely culturally off for your business, but we're going
Sure.
to ask you to be a little bit silly sometimes. And we need you to trust us that being a little silly sometimes will not correlate to people thinking you lack some kind of professionalism, right? Like
Hmm.
this kind of marrying being a little bit
Yeah.
fun makes you more approachable, but also demonstrating technical expertise. And so
So that's
now
one
we're
of the humps you got to get over.
it is. It tends to be because it's a challenge to make people act silly. It's very easy to get them to act stuffy and professional, right? But silly breaks down barriers.
All
And
right.
if done in
All
the
right.
right environment with the right context, right? Like HVAC tech doesn't need to be silly when he's welding the copper piping, right? But when he's getting coffee in the morning, getting ready to go out on the job, he can be silly with the crew, right? Those are it's appropriate to know where those lines are. But now we go and we film content and they do like funny trends, but we also film content of them on site with the blow torches out, doing the technical work in the difficult places in the house to get to and explaining what they're doing technically. So we show that like these are real people with personalities. They tell jokes like everybody else. And then, one individual on their crew, brother of of the CEO, is the lead technician. And this guy's in his mid 20s and everybody's like, he's a wizard. He knows everything. Guys that have been on the job for 25 years are like, I ask Bobby questions. I'm 46. He's 26. I ask him technical questions. And he's just this
Naturally.
like brilliant kid who is also a natural on camera and never even realized he was a natural on camera.
Right.
And so now the content creation work with this client is easy and it gets visibility, it gets attention. And then we couple that with some other things that we do with them that kind of add outsized results, right? Where we do the search engine optimization so that they're getting the demand capture attention as well as the social media demand generation side of attention, a more comprehensive outcome versus getting all their business off of Instagram Reels. That's just one avenue, but it's one that we've really gone from zero to something of real value with them.
So what I hear you saying is great content, authentic, somewhat humorous in the right way, and then certainly get it seen. Any other thoughts about getting attention today versus maybe 5 years ago?
But there's two sides of this where there's the stuff that are like foundational building blocks that are platform agnostic, digital versus analog agnostic, the basic blocking and tackling type of stuff, like good customer service, right? Not all attention's good. And you'll get a lot of bad attention if you have bad customer service. And so some of this starts with those core principles being done correctly, right? Like having a cohesive brand with a story that you can tell about it. And so part of it is those kind of skill level one baseline foundational stuff done correctly. And in many cases, we counsel our clients through some of that. And then there's the things that are highly dynamic, but it's got some principles that will be constant. Right. So it's like when I mean highly dynamic, I get to things like, should I be advertising on Instagram or TikTok? Right. Or how would you compare running the $300 of TikTok ads versus sponsoring a local rec football team for $300 for their jerseys? That's a weird question to get, but one we've gotten before, right? And so
Yeah,
this
it's
is the
probably
old,
real
they're
for them. Yeah.
very real for them, right? That's an actual, they've got $300 bills sitting on the table and they're asking, put it here or put it here. Like that question needs an answer. And so what I look at there is there's kind of core guiding principles that will allow you to navigate a constantly changing and dynamic environment of platforms and content consumption and content formats, right? It's people will consume content for entertainment. That's a principle, a rule, a law, right? You can chip it into stone. And this has happened, regardless of medium, regardless of platform, regardless of state of technological advancement, right? And so people will consume content for entertainment. This goes back throughout all of human evolution. You can kind of guarantee it. Everything from storytelling around a campfire to 3 hours of scrolling on TikTok, right? And so you just got to be in front of them where they're already consuming content. It's the baseline principle of why Super Bowl commercials are valuable. So
Exactly.
all you have to do then to really know what to do and how to guide people is be relatively well versed on where people are consuming content right now, right? And then maybe take it a step further and be able to break that down based on generalized demographic groups, right? And everybody, this is not entirely true, but a good example of that is knowing the younger audiences on TikTok and the older audiences on Facebook, and kind of everybody in the middle is on Instagram, right? That's an overgeneralization, oversimplification, but that's kind of in line with what I'm talking about is understanding how to break that down into generalized demographic groups, right? And then one step further from that, one more layer of the onion is what are the unique aspects of how people interact and engage on each individual platform, which is going to guide and inform what I need to put there to get the reaction that I want, you know? So
Right.
there's like, you got to do the core foundational things right. Then you have to know where is the demand capture opportunity in your industry and where is the demand generation opportunity in your industry. And the demand generation is always where people are already consuming other content, right? And, first half of the 20th century, you better be on radio. In the second half, you better be on TV. Now you better be on Instagram, right? Big generalizations, but you see the point I'm
Right.
getting at there.
Right. Right.
And the demand generation, or excuse me, the demand capture, is be where they are looking when they already have the need and know you're the solution or somebody like you. And that's everything from what used to be like hang your shingle, right? Where's the foot traffic? And now it's what is your Google search ranking?
So for a company like this HVAC, and so you might even do a little brand conversation to establish, what their brand is, what the brand personality is, that sort
That's
of
a
thing.
core part of every client onboarding, even if all we're doing is hosting their website.
Yeah, even if they come to you and say, "Hey, I need the phone to ring," you say, "Whoa!" You stop them and you go back to square one. Is that what I'm
That's
hearing?
actually the most common first conversation is, "I need my phone to ring. I need more sales." And I'm like, "Cool, we'll get there in a minute. First, tell me the story of your company from start to now."
Right.
Right? I need to
And
know
then
the
you go through
story.
the consumer journey with them as best they understand it, try to ferret that out.
And in many cases, it's that misunderstanding of the gap between what they think it is and what it actually is so great that I can almost
Great.
immediately tell them, actually, that's not the correct assessment. Here is your actual list of customer buying priorities and the journey that they will take, regardless of the one you try and send them
Great.
on.
Great.
And that can be a
Fascinating.
shocking thing, but it's highly educational when you hear it, I think.
I think I have a sense of it, but what makes Squeeze different?
Yeah, so we have differentiators that are a little bit public and flagrant, right? Which is we don't do long-term contracts. It's
The
30-day
beard?
notice. Everything's month to month. Yeah, all three owners of Squeeze have a beard, which is ridiculous. But yeah, that like we kind of put the onus back on ourselves to
Short-term contracts.
demonstrate value, right? And what's interesting is in our case, short-term contracts have resulted in longer client relationships, not shorter ones. And then I really think that the real differentiator though is that we do not make assumptions. We treat every single client as an individual entity and we customize the approach, right? And given my military background, I take a very like blocking it out into individual tactics and operations, right? And we break things down and categorize them and then put them back together so that the client understands the entire lead flow, everything from first introduction to transaction and what we're doing at each of those stages to have an impact on the customer decision. So we really bring the client in a very transparent way on how all of this works, what decision points their customers are making at each point, and what we're doing to influence that. So it's this like ultimate level of transparency around the customized tactics and marketing operations that we're doing. And so I would describe it as a customized tactical approach for every single client is really the differentiator.
It sounds like they get a lot of the partners' time. The three of you are highly involved, and they're not just passed off to the next level.
Well, we don't have any sales reps and we don't have any client managers. Every single employee at Squeeze, including the three owners, have technical validity for deliverables to clients. And I lead client strategy. My two business partners, one, Eric, leads all project based work. So we have ownership management of projects. And to scale with that kind of owner attention, we have to build systems and build the team the right way. But everyone on the team is technically qualified for deliverables. So if you are doing an update call on your ads campaigns, you're talking to the ads manager who's clicking the buttons in Google Ads, right? This is the person doing the work versus the person talking to someone doing the work. And
Gotcha.
so by taking that very direct approach, we've also found a lot of efficiency in client communication. And, we're trying to create an environment where our clients feel like they have a marketing department, not a middleman between them and their marketing department.
Um, let's go to some obstacles that you guys have overcome recently. Some things that were challenging that you slayed over the last year.
Yeah, I think there's some simple administrative stuff, there's some how we run our business things that I could key in on, but really the big one, which I think is kind of indicative of our business making a transition, is we've kind of changed the framing of how we work with clients from very transactional, right? Like you pay this for this action to a relationship based on expertise and experience and us being able to work with them to move long term towards bigger goals and even help plan and design what those goals look like, right? And so what that allows us to do very simply is build bigger client lifetime value and charge more every month for the services. So we describe this as our transition from small business to mid market. And really, what that's been is we transitioned from pricing out every single service. So we used to have a price for SEO, a price for digital ads, a price for social media management, a price for email campaigns. They were all listed out on our proposal like a menu. That's not the
Gotcha.
case anymore, right? We quote a marketing agency of record relationship now. And so what that really means is in every proposal I issue, it's either listed on the proposal as a discrete service or it's generally implied, I'm your CMO now.
Right.
And so, or if you have a CMO, I go direct with your CMO as a peer to plan this out, strategize, and talk through the outcomes after execution of whatever that plan is, right? And so
Michael, I love that. I love that.
effective, it allows you to go from only near term planning to near, mid, and long term planning, right? And so it removes the short sighted nature of a very transactional marketing agency relationship where, I can kind of draw a parallel to the way venture capital has impacted business decision making priorities, right? It's like you need to get out of the cycle of what is this quarter's profitability and look at where do we want to be in 5 years, and by changing our relationship style or the way we approach relationships with clients, now we quote a set flat retainer amount and build expectations about what a weekly working rhythm looks like, what those deliverables look like, what expected outcomes from campaigns look like, and we kind of identify those KPIs as early as possible, benchmark them and set targets for them. And then we're working off of scorecards based on the benchmark and the target, and we're addressing friction points as they come up, and we're strategizing on how to get through difficult challenges. And when we have the ability to have that open conversation with the client, then it's less about what services are we rendering and more about what do we do next to hit the goals we have.
And how do you guys talk about feedback? I mean, do you have weekly, monthly meetings?
Of some businesses, the way their operations work and the level of service we have with them requires a weekly meeting, but that's very set with an agenda. And there's all of this thing you could get into with meeting theory, but ideally, when we do those meetings, we want a clear expectation up front of what the agenda is and what we're trying to get out of the meeting.
Mhm.
And we do all of the data ingest for all of our clients' platforms and everything that could be indicative of success or failure or interesting data point as regards these marketing campaigns. And we kind of collectivize all of that data and get it processed in a way that's consumable on a report, pretty standard. And then we have a full page at the front of the report where I analyze the data and write what it means to me on that report every month.
Yeah. Again, I just love that CMO thing. And, personally, if I was on the other end of this, I would love for you to enumerate that as you are my CMO, not
Yeah.
imply it, but say, boom, this is who I am now for you. This is part of the deal. I think that is really, really smart and powerful. Talk to me about your biggest challenges, the biggest problems you're thinking about and going to take on this year.
Well, I'm lucky in that most of those are good challenges, right? One of the biggest challenges that I have is time prioritization and time commitment because we're in a space where we've got a lot of opportunity. And so the prioritization of where I put my time and how that is results in the most effective outcomes or most desirable outcomes for us. And that's something that extends to every single person on the Squeeze staff because we run a very lean and highly efficient agency. Right. So we have over 35 clients and it's that number is a weird gray area because we have some clients that are much lower level of service and some clients where we're their marketing agency of record and they're a national franchise and every single thing that's published publicly about them touches us first, right? So, but you can kind of characterize it as 35, 40 clients. We have a staff of 10. Like we are not a very big agency. And so time prioritization is always a factor. We have opportunities to engage with businesses on a much greater level where that CMO is set in stone and involves being heavily involved in the day to day operation of their business. Those opportunities come through, but the level of time commitment versus the level of potential long term value has to line up. So the biggest challenge is kind of parsing through opportunities and determining where the best place to spend and commit time and resources to, which is maybe the best and most amazing challenge to ever have. it's it's a gift to have that one, but done poorly
Yes.
results in immediate negative outcomes for my business.
What
And
else?
so it's got plenty of risk involved as well.
Any other challenges or friction that you're working on?
Yeah, we struggle to are working on really like balancing long-term planning and goals, right? With the standard kind of monthly sales cycle of like, hey, this is our monthly revenue. This is where our monthly revenue goal is. Like what sales, what clients are going to close in the next couple of weeks to let us hit some of these very short-term targets versus how are we evolving the agency long-term to be where we want to be in 5 or 8 years. And that is just always a massive friction point. Not necessarily that there's big disagreeing opinions within ownership or on our staff,
Right.
but it's a tough thing to navigate, because you let one of those sides of the coin slide and you just don't have a future, right? You spend all your time in the clouds looking at 10 years from now, like day to day sales are going to suffer.
What about on the client side?
That's much easier, much, much easier to figure out who a good versus bad client is, but it's a lot of the same personality traits. This concept of taking responsibility or willingness to take responsibility for things is going to keep kind of coming up in indicative of a good fit, whether it's for an employee, for a client, or for somebody I want to be friends with in my cul-de-sac. You know, like people that are willing to take responsibility, that are not looking to shift or move blame. They can talk about uncomfortable things and friction points transparently, openly, and without weird anxiety about it. Like simply being able to approach the thing and do the work and not feel a particular kind of way, right? That like the more unbothered they are by things, but also actively engaged and willing to take responsibility. And those things are obvious in the first sales call with clients. Having done a couple of thousand of these now, it's like they have a neon sign above their head that tells me if they're likely to be a good fit or not. Um,
Great.
it starts with being able to clearly, easily, and typically passionately describe a value proposition.
Do they know what they're doing? Do they know what they're
Yeah.
offering? Do they know
Do
what
they
they're
know
providing?
what they sell to who and who they sell it to first? And then
Yeah.
most importantly, do they know why those people buy? And if they can articulate that to me clearly, and then also tell me what they're bad at and tell me what they're good at in a way that sounds honest, we've got something to work with.
Great, great. Finally, want to talk about AI. You brought it up, I think, once or twice. Tell me about AI in your agency today. What role is it playing?
So I do some public speaking on the utility of AI and business development and business operations. And there's a couple of key principles I hit, and we have to be like stay very much on one side of the line internally in our business for this to be successful. Because the goal of leveraging AI in business development is uh, more with no loss of quality. More is the easy part. You can just do more. It can do a lot of stuff for you. But the problem is that most business owners struggle to transition out of it just being a chat bot, right? Because you only get so much out of a chat bot, right? You can ask it questions, it can give you answers. It's the transition to AI agent work that really starts to add utility. And so, I've worked with the agent mode on ChatGPT, and I've worked with the co-work mode on Claude, and I talk and counsel business owners through using those tools. And the main principle I say is don't go beyond yourself, right? Don't have it produce something because you can't produce it, because then you have no ability to check on its validity, right? You can only have it do things for you that you could also do with technical expertise, because that gives you the ability to check its work. And that's
Hmm.
like some core baseline stuff. If you don't have the technical expertise to check its work and find every one of its mistakes, that is not something you can ship publicly.
Hmm.
So don't go beyond yourself is the first one. And then look like super simple administrative stuff first. The boring stuff is what AI does the best help with. Because as an example, I regularly have an AI agent. So something that can actually is connected to my email, is connected to my Google Drive, has internet access, right? Has all of these connectors set up. I'll have it go into my inbox, find every single person that inquired with us that I sent a scheduling link to that I never got a phone call with on my calendar, right? And then I'll have it draft all of the follow-up emails individualized to those people with correct context on how long it's been since our last point of contact, right? And yesterday it generated 14 email drafts for me. And over time, I've trained it on these are the people I actually want to follow up with, because these are the types of businesses that typically work well with Squeeze. Here's some indicators, right? If they have a Gmail in their contact form, -1 point. If they have their business company website URL email suffix, +2 points, right? So I gave it a little scoring system on how to evaluate lead quality, and it generated 14 follow-up emails for me in about 20 minutes. And so it just did 6 hours of work for me in 20 minutes. But the important thing is, if I had done that work manually, it would have been the exact same quality, right?
Hmm.
And so it's that kind of thing that allows an agency like us to scale higher while staying very, very lean and efficient. Because in order to have that same sales output myself individually without these tools, I would need a staff of three. Like we've
Gotcha.
done this math. It's
Yeah.
3 people.
Are you using it beyond, managing your email flows and how
For
else are you
sure.
using it inside the agency?
Market research, it's everything for market research, right? Like I have an economics degree. I have a high level of proficiency in doing business market research because half of my college degree was that, right? And I've got so many reps in this at Squeeze. I know exactly what to look for to find the indicators that pertain to what we plan to do as marketing operation for the client. So I can guide the AI in exactly what to look for. I'm not saying go do market research. I'm saying go evaluate these parameters as pertains to this in this industry. But that's a time consuming thing. Again, this is why I say staff of three. One of those people would need to be a full time researcher, period. And so I use it for market research. And what that allows us to do is we don't just send a proposal. We send a proposal with a full market and competitive research and a detailed SWOT analysis. Now,
Gotcha.
the key is in order for that to be effective and leverage AI to be able to do that, you need to be the kind of person who can do real depth of market and competitor analysis and do a really great SWOT analysis. So you have to have that skill and expertise first to be able to effectively leverage the AI tool and to get the skill and expertise, you need to have the manual reps. And so that's the real challenge is AI is fun. It becomes less fun when you realize I need to already have this skill to leverage the AI tool to do this. Otherwise, I'll have no check on quality of output.
Gotcha. That sounds to me like a lot of secondary research efficiency. What about, are you using it for any sort of primary research with your clients, customers at all?
We use it for large data set processing all the time. And so we'll take customer data and put it in and give it specific parameters and specific things to look for. It just Google Analytics is a soup of numbers for most people that look at it. It has unbelievable depth, which is valuable, but you can get lost in the mix. And so I can upload massive data sets. I can also do much more depth of analysis because of its processing capability that I wouldn't even be able to do or approach in the first place, right?
Wow, that's great. It's amazing. Amazing how
It's
the
a heck
world
of a
has
tool.
changed. Well, I don't want to keep you any longer. This has really been quite enlightening for me anyway, and I certainly have enjoyed it too.
You're